Let's talk about that word. You know which one. We're gonna do this one more again and settle this once and forever. Although I already know good and goddamn well this isn't going to settle because we're going to have another moron saying the N-word when he or she shouldn't be in T-minus 6 days. And immediately after that, people will be acting brand new all over again like, what's the big deal? She can say it. Her great-great-granddad's uncle's dog was black. Despite me being unequivocal about this, or at least my feelings on this in my last video, there were still far too many people in the comments who somehow remain confused as to why it is not okay for someone who isn't black to say the N-word. This isn't really confusion though, it's intentional ignorance. People are feigning confusion because they want to cling to the notion that they have permission, that they have a right to say this word. I have asked before and I ask again, why is this word so important to y'all? Stop pretending this is complicated. It's incredibly simple. Y'all just don't like the answer, so you're pretending that this is a complex issue when it is not. So one more time for the slow kids in the back, when it comes to the N-word, if you are not black, just don't say it. Ever, for any reason, under any circumstances. At the very least, don't say it in public. Don't say it on camera. Don't post yourself saying it to your social media. Don't post yourself singing it in a song. Let's make it even simpler. If the slur would never realistically be used against you and therefore cannot realistically cause you any pain, then you don't get to say it. Just like it's not realistic that someone would call me the F word, not fuck the other one. That's why I don't get to say that. That word, the F word, is not my word to reclaim. I'm not the one who gets to decide it's just a word and people need to stop giving it power because it doesn't mean anything, because it does. That word still does mean a lot to a lot of people. Even if I had a gay friend come to me and tell me that it was okay for me to say it because I was cool and I was down, which incidentally has happened, I still wouldn't. Why would I need to? More importantly, why would I want to? Getting a pass from one person or even a handful of people in that marginalized group doesn't take away the fact that that slur still hurts a lot of other people in that group. So it's really easy. I just don't say it. It's basic respect. A corollary could be someone calling me a bitch. A guy actually did call me a bitch in the comments under my last video. Obviously, he was blocked immediately, but it's the same type of thing. I can call me a bitch, but you certainly cannot. Despite how often we hear black people saying the N-word nowadays, it has never been and it will never be just a word. I got called a relatively recently. More accurately, what this old white man said to me was, fucking suck, and then he moved as if he was going to uppercut me. This was just walking down the street in 2019 in Los Angeles. I concede that that is not ordinary. That doesn't happen all the time, but these kinds of things do happen. That is neither the first nor the last time I will be called a in my life, and that experience rattled me. It was just as upsetting as the first time I was called a nigger as a child. Under my last video, there were even some black folks chiming in the comments saying that we can't decide who does and does not get to say a word, and I counter, of course we can. That's ridiculous, or at least of course we can philosophically. We can't enforce it, but deciding who does and does not get to do this and who does and does not get to do that is the very foundation of society. Black people's feelings on this run the entire gamut. Some black people say the N-word 100 times a day, while there are other black people who feel that no one should ever say it ever. Now, I think it's 100% unrealistic to think that there will ever be a day where no one says the N-word ever. That's not on the table. The N-word is here to stay. But on an emotional level, I think both stances are valid. And I don't judge any other black person for how they choose to heal and deal, whether they say it a lot or whether they never ever say it at all. We all cope in different ways. Personally, I don't tend to say it myself unless I'm discussing the word itself or unless I'm making a point about how black people are viewed in certain situations due to racism and racist systems. Because if we're going to play this game of being dense and acting like, oh, it's just a word, the fact of the matter is, if it wasn't It just would have been something else. There just would have been some other word in our language to dehumanize and disenfranchise Black people the way that the N-word does. D.L. Hughley actually summed things up really well in a clip that I will link below. It was from earlier this year when he was talking about Tony Robbins using the N-word. In short, what he was saying was that the word itself encompasses all of the violence, disenfranchisement, racism, and bigotry that has been directed at Black people on a systematic and personal basis for centuries. So on the most surface level, yes, the N-word is just a word, but white supremacy is what makes it impossible for the N-word to really just be a word, because it makes sure that these systems continue as they are. When you get down to it, Black people have never been the ones giving the word its power. So don't talk to me about how it should be okay for everyone to say it because rappers say it. I am not responsible for what rappers do. And are you seriously using Tunchi as your moral compass? Grow up. You'd rather be amoral and disrespect an entire race of people because Drake says it in a song? As I said already, I assume a lot of y'all are saying it anyway when you're in private. Yet you still want to bitch because we're asking you not to say it in front of or to us, because we're asking you not to post yourself singing it on Instagram. But that's exactly the issue. Y'all are more concerned about how you perceive yourselves to be losing some God-given right by not being able to say this word. More accurately, y'all don't want Black people to have anything that you cannot take for yourselves. And when it comes to non-Black Latinos saying it, and this is more specific to New York and like the East Coast, Black people, we need to agree to stop handing out hall passes to non-Black people of color to say this word. I'm from Queens, so I know that this is a thing and it's been a thing for a long time, but times change, so get over it. Casual homophobia used to be mainstream too, but little by little we're making progress in that fight by calling people out on it. And since y'all keep referring to rappers saying the N-word in rap music, I don't think any rapper would be able to get away with saying the F-word today unless he was openly gay and reclaiming the word. This is no different. I could not have been more explicit about my thoughts on this issue in my last video. I was crystal clear. And yet I still had people in the comments like, why isn't it okay for me to say it? Oh, so I can't even sing a song now? The fact that I got so much pushback that I felt compelled to make this, yet another video ostensibly saying the same exact thing, saying shit that I have already made very, very clear, speaks volumes. Again, y'all are making this complicated, and it isn't. It's incredibly simple. Just don't say it. Stop acting slow, although a lot of y'all clearly are not acting. And if you think it's somehow unfair that only Black people get to decide whether they say it or not, call it reparations. To be honest, a lot of those comments on my last video were very useful because they allowed me to identify and block a lot of people who needed blocking. I've even had people calling me racist for saying that non-Black people of color don't get to say the N-word. Having Black people in your family tree 3, 4, 5 generations back does not make you Black. I think everyone can probably find a Black person in their family tree if they go back far enough. If you are not unambiguously Black and don't pretend y'all don't know what that means, then this is not your word to reclaim. This is not your word to say it's just a word. I always welcome respectful and thoughtful dissent in the comments. It's a privilege to hear a lot of y'all's different perspective on things because it helps me to expand my worldview. I have told y'all, I'm as problematic as the next person, and we are all works in progress. But for those saying that I'm racist and colorist and promoting even more division simply for saying that non-Black people do not get to say the N-word, period, end of sentence, I do not welcome the no logic acrobatics required for that line of reasoning. Get the f*** out of here. I think I wore a divot into the block button blocking trolls on that last video, and good riddance. I have already conceded that getting non-Black people to stop saying the N-word is completely unenforceable. We can't stop you from saying it. We can't stop you from being a racist, insensitive, disrespectful prick. So the fact that y'all are bucking this hard on something that we literally cannot make you do, it's showing that you're willing to fight harder to continue being an asshole than you're willing to just stop saying one word out of respect to black people. Y'all who keep saying it's just a word, you're proving my point. Because if it really was just a word, you wouldn't be fighting this hard to keep saying it. This is about asserting your privilege and supremacy. If it were just a word, then you'd have no issue just letting it go. If I were to argue this hard that I should be allowed to say any slur used against a group that I'm not a part of, I would be canceled for real, because that's the only time cancel culture actually works. Because Dog the Bounty Hunter is just as racist as the day is long, and he literally did not get canceled for saying the N-word. That show of his was on for 5 years after he was recorded saying the N-word repeatedly. But no one ever gets canceled for disrespecting black people. Adrian Expression recently articulated something that I've been saying for years. Let black people start throwing around racial slurs directed at other groups on Instagram or wherever and see what happens. The internet would fucking explode. And you can bet your ass that cancel culture would suddenly be all too real. You guys have probably noticed the construction noises getting worse as I've been talking, so we're going to say that's that on that. As I said, this issue is never ending, but at least the next time this happens, if someone's asking why they don't get to say the N-word, I guess I can just direct them to this video. Thank you for watching and keeping me company, and before I get out of here, I will leave you with one reminder, and that is to never trust anyone with a Morphe code. Bye-bye.
That's some nappy-headed hose there, I'm going to tell you that now.